So let me ask you a question. Who do you think is the single person who saved more lives than any other scientist in the 20th century? You've probably never even heard his name, but here's the thing. His work has almost certainly saved your life or the life of someone you love. This is his incredible story.
First, let's just start with a number, 8 million. According to one estimate, that's how many lives his work saves every single year. That's not a one-time thing, that's an ongoing legacy.
And here's another number for you. Over 40, that's how many vaccines this one man and his team developed over his career. I mean, that's a record of productivity that is just completely off the charts. Which brings us to the big mystery, right? With a legacy this massive, how is it even possible that most of us have no idea who he is? Well, that's what we're going to figure out together. To really understand his work, you have to understand the man. And his story doesn't start in some high-tech, sterile lab. Nope, it begins on the high plains of Montana. Let's meet Maurice Hilleman. Hilleman's start in life was, well, it was incredibly tough. His twin sister died at birth, and his mother passed away just 2 days later. He was raised on the family farm, and money was so tight that college wasn't even really on the table. He almost didn't make it. But he did. And he didn't just get by. He graduated first in his class.
But here's where it gets interesting. It was that farm background that actually gave him this unique, almost secret advantage. He said a lot of his success came down to one specific thing he learned on the farm, working with chickens. Yeah, chickens.
So what's the big deal with chickens? Well, it turns out fertile chicken eggs are basically the perfect little incubators for growing the viruses you need to make vaccines. While all his peers were just learning about this from textbooks, Hilleman had years of actual hands-on experience before he ever even walked into a university lab.
But it wasn't just the practical skills. Hilleman had this fiercely independent and curious mind right from the very beginning. He was not the kind of guy who just accepted what he was told.
And this rebellious streak, it showed up early. This one little story says it all. Picture this. He's in 8th grade, in church, and he gets caught. Not for goofing off, but for secretly reading Charles Darwin's On the Origin of Species. He was a scientist to his core, always questioning, always looking for the evidence.
And that mindset is what defined his professional life. His foresight and his willingness to act decisively were put to the ultimate test, with literally millions of lives hanging in the balance.
So get this, it's 1957. Hilleman sees a report about a flu outbreak in Hong Kong, and his gut tells him this is going to be bad, like pandemic-level bad. He works like a maniac, creates a vaccine prototype in just 9 days. But here's the crucial part. He convinces companies to start making it right away, before it even hit the US. That single decision is credited with saving hundreds of thousands of lives.
But Hilleman wasn't just a crisis manager, you know? Some of his most important, game-changing breakthroughs came from places that were deeply personal and, frankly, ingenious.
And the story behind the mumps vaccine, it's probably the most famous example of his unique way of thinking. This breakthrough didn't start in some multi-million-dollar laboratory. It started in his own daughter's bedroom.
So when his 5-year-old daughter, Geraldine, came down with the mumps, what did he do? He drove to his lab in the middle of the night, grabbed a sterile swab, came home, and took a sample right from her throat. He took that virus, cultivated it, weakened it in the lab, and it became the foundation for the mumps vaccine. And get this, her strain, the Geraldine strain, is still the one used in the MMR shot today. Incredible.
His impact was just massive, all across the board. But if you asked Hilleman himself, he'd tell you the hepatitis B vaccine was his single greatest achievement. And he wasn't the only one who thought so. A pioneer in liver transplants, Thomas Starzl called it one of the most outstanding contributions to human health of the entire century.
Okay, so this brings us right back to our original question. Why is this giant of science so unknown? Well, the answer really lies in his personality, which was complicated, and how he saw the work itself.
Hilleman was a total paradox. On the one hand, he was a brutally tough boss. He ran his lab like a drill sergeant, was famous for his profane rants, and he even kept fake shrunken heads in his office as quote-unquote trophies for employees he'd fired. And yet, his team was fiercely loyal to him, and he was so profoundly modest that he never named a single one of his world-changing discoveries after himself.
And his story matters so much today because his work is this quiet, invisible shield protecting basically every child. Think about it. Of the 14 vaccines routinely recommended for kids in the US, Hilleman's lab developed 8 of them. 8. We're talking measles, mumps, chickenpox, meningitis. The list goes on and on.
You know, maybe Robert Gallo, the co-discoverer of HIV, put it best. He said Hilleman did more for human health with less recognition than anyone else. He wasn't a celebrity scientist looking for the spotlight. He was just the most effective person in the room. A true unsung hero whose legacy isn't measured in awards or fame, but in millions upon millions of lives.